Have you ever poured weeks, maybe even months into building an AI model, one that looked amazing on paper, you know, sky high accuracy, only to see it just, well, gather dust because nobody actually used it in the real world? It's a really common thing, actually, and incredibly frustrating, even for people who've been doing this a while. That feeling, that gap between the technical brilliance and the practical adoption, that's exactly what we're diving into today. Because the core truth really is that the AI model itself is often just the start. The real challenge, the real measure of success is turning that impressive model into something actually useful, something integrated that solves a genuine business problem. So welcome to the Deep Dive. Our mission today is to unpack why a technically great AI model might just sit there unused, and what it really takes to land an AI project successfully, from start to finish. Guiding us through this whole landscape, we have our expert, Dr. AI. It's really great to have you here to share your insights.
Thanks. It's definitely a critical topic and one I've run into it firsthand more than once. It's so easy to get caught up in, let's say, the technical elegance of a model, right? But understanding the whole picture, the product life cycle, that's where the real impact happens.
Okay, so let's jump right into it then. Why does this happen? Why can a model that boasts, I don't know, say 95% accuracy, still be considered not ready for the real world? It just seems, well, counterintuitive.
It really does seem that way at first glance. And honestly, it's a tough lesson. A lot of us learn it the hard way, on the job. I vividly remember this one experience. I'd spent a ton of time developing this prediction model. I was absolutely convinced it was ready for production. Its accuracy was 95%. So I presented my findings feeling pretty confident, only for my manager to look at the report and just say, flat out, this can't go live.
Oof, that must have been pretty jarring, 95% accuracy and unusable. What was the reasoning? What did you find when you sort of dug deeper?
Well, my first thought was just disbelief. How can 95% not be good enough? But as I started to investigate beyond just the model's performance metrics, the reasons became pretty clear pretty quickly. The problem wasn't really a flaw in the model's technical accuracy itself. It was its complete disconnect from the real-world operational needs. For instance, the data sources needed to feed my model. They were incredibly intricate, scattered across all these old legacy systems, which meant the operational costs, the maintenance costs, just to keep the model running, to keep getting and processing that complex data. Well, they would have been astronomical.
Right, the overhead.
Exactly. And for any business, high operating costs without clear proportional value, that's just a non-starter.
So the tech solution, no matter how elegant, basically became a burden because of its dependencies and just the effort to keep it alive. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Precisely. And another major hurdle was the model's output.
The results themselves.
Yeah. While it was statistically sound, the predictions, the recommendations it gave, they were presented in this super technical format, completely incomprehensible to the business team who actually needed to use them.
Right, so they couldn't interpret the insights.
No, which led to this fundamental lack of trust, made adoption basically impossible.
That really highlights a critical communication breakdown, doesn't it? Where the technical stuff doesn't translate into something actionable for the people on the ground.
Exactly right. And maybe the biggest issue, the most fundamental one, was that this model, this technically impressive thing with high accuracy, it just didn't have a direct, measurable link to the company's KPIs.
The key performance indicators.
Right. Those critical metrics the business uses to track success, strategic goals, all that. My model was a beautiful answer, but it wasn't answering a clearly defined high-priority business problem that actually impacted the bottom line. So that whole experience really hammered home that just building a model, no matter how good its metrics look in, isolation, doesn't automatically mean you've solved a problem or provided real business value.
That's a really powerful story, and this is such a vital distinction. It just underscores that we need to look way beyond just the model itself. So given that, what does a complete AI project actually look like? What are all the critical pieces of this puzzle from that real-world perspective you're talking about?
Yeah, if we zoom out a bit and connect this to the bigger picture, a true AI project is, well, it's a comprehensive journey. It's cyclical, actually, much like any robust product development. It's definitely not a build it once and you're done kind of thing. I usually break it down into 6 critical steps. And this really emphasizes its nature as a product's life cycle. Okay, so first, you absolutely must define the problem. Sounds obvious, but it means clearly identifying the specific business pain point or opportunity you're trying to tackle. What's the measurable goal here? Second, you move into data collection and cleaning. Gathering, curating, preparing clean, reliable data. This step is so often underestimated. Third, then and only then do you really get to model selection and training, choosing and training an appropriate AI model for the job. Fourth is validation and evaluation. This is where you rigorously assess your model's performance, but using metrics that are actually relevant to the business problem, not just, accuracy in a vacuum.
Okay, so up to evaluation. That feels like a pretty standard data science pipeline, maybe. Where does it shift from just building a model to thinking about it as a full product?
Right. This is exactly where it becomes about the product's life cycle. And it's where, frankly, many projects either succeed or just fall short. So the fifth step is deployment and monitoring. This means actually integrating the model into the live operational environment. And then this is key, continuously tracking its behavior, its performance, its impact out there in the real world. And the sixth step, just as critical, is continuous iteration. The real world is dynamic, right? It doesn't just stand still. So your model can't either. You absolutely need processes in place to regularly update it, retrain it as the environment changes, as the data drifts, as business needs evolve. So the core message, the punchline here, I guess, is really profound. AI is not just about modeling. It's about the product's entire life cycle. And you wouldn't launch a new piece of software and just expect it to never need updates or maintenance, would you? AI models demand exactly the same ongoing care.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like designing this amazing high-performance engine, but then totally forgetting you need to put fuel in it, maintain it, and adapt it for different road conditions. Okay, so we have these 6 critical steps. Define, collect, clean, model, train, validate, deploy, monitor, iterate. Now, let's dive a bit deeper. What are some of the most common industry pitfalls, the landmines people need to be really aware of within these stages? Because I imagine there are traps at every turn.
Oh, absolutely. Landmines everywhere, honestly, even for experienced teams. Let's start right back at step 1, defining the problem. A huge pitfall here is solving the wrong problem, or maybe a problem that isn't clearly articulated from the business side. Teams can get really excited about a technical challenge, build this incredible model that optimizes for, say, computational speed.
Yeah, something technically cool.
Exactly. When the actual business bottleneck is maybe data quality or how understandable the results are to the human operators, it becomes a solution looking for a problem, and it just wastes immense resources. Then we get to data collection and cleaning. So many people, especially those newer to AI, but even some veterans, they just underestimate this phase massively. The reality is something like a staggering 80% of project time is often spent just on getting the data, cleaning it, preparing it. 80%.
80%.
Wow.
That's a huge chunk of time that I think often gets completely glossed over in the excitement about algorithms.
It really does. And the pitfall isn't just the old saying, dirty data in, useless model out, though that's definitely true. It's also the hidden costs of dirty data that bite you later. You get models that are unstable, give inconsistent predictions, need constant manual fixing, just quietly draining resources and, crucially, trust. Or even just the sheer difficulty of getting clean data in big companies with privacy rules and siloed systems. It can be a nightmare.
Right. It truly highlights that without that solid data foundation, everything else just crumbles.
Absolutely. Okay, next, model selection and training. A really common pitfall here is over-engineering.
Going too complex.
Yeah. Teams might default to the latest, most complex deep learning model because it's technically exciting, right? Even when maybe a simpler, more explainable algorithm like, I don't know, a gradient boosting tree or something could deliver maybe 90% of the business value. And it would come with far less computational cost, easier maintenance, and importantly, greater trust from the business users because they can actually sort of understand why it made a certain prediction. The cool factor can definitely overshadow practicality sometimes.
Choosing the right tool for the job, not just the shiniest one.
Precisely. Then, following that, we hit validation and evaluation. And this is a major pitfall area because so many people still rely mainly, sometimes solely, on accuracy as their go-to metric. But as, anyone grappling with real-world models knows, accuracy can be incredibly misleading. Think about that fraud detection scenario we sometimes talk about. A model that's 99% accurate sounds amazing, right? Phenomenal. But if that tiny 1% of missed fraud cases still adds up to millions of dollars in losses for the company, or maybe it leads to big regulatory fines, suddenly 99% doesn't look quite so shiny.
That's such a critical distinction. It's not just about how often you're right, but what kind of right or wrong you are and what the consequences are.
Exactly. And this is why other metrics like precision, recall, and the F1 score, these are your real friends here. We're talking about situations where the cost of a false positive saying something is fraud when it isn't is vastly different from a false negative missing actual fraud.
Different kinds of errors matter differently.
Totally. Like in critical medical diagnosis, maybe recall is paramount, right?
Yeah.
You'd rather have a few false alarms, investigate them, than miss a single true positive case. But maybe for targeted marketing, high precision might be more valuable. You want to make sure almost everyone you reach is truly interested, even if you miss a few potential leads overall.
And the F1 score tries to balance those.
Yeah, the F1 score helps find a balance when both are important. The real pitfall here is not taking the time to understand which metric or combination of metrics truly aligns with the specific business risk and the actual objective, which leads us directly into deployment and monitoring. A massive pitfall here is the old set it and forget it mentality.
Ah, yes, the launch and walk away approach.
Exactly. So many teams get their model working beautifully in a nice, clean test environment. They deploy it, and then they sort of mentally check out, thinking job done.
Yeah.
But the real world, it's messy, it's dynamic, it doesn't stand still for a second. Think about like a customer service bot.
Okay.
When it first goes live, it might be great, really smooth. But what happens when the company launches new products? Or customer language habits change? Or new slang terms pop up online?
The world evolves around it.
Precisely. Without continuous monitoring to actually detect performance degradation, what we sometimes call model drift, and without established processes for retraining, that bot is going to age really quickly. Its responses will become irrelevant, maybe even annoying, frustrating users, and eventually the whole system just fails, often leading to a complete loss of trust in AI within the organization.
So it just slowly becomes useless or worse, counterproductive.
Exactly. So the core message here is really that the biggest challenges, the toughest parts of AI projects, often lie in the deployment and that ongoing maintenance, the continuous iteration part. Not just the initial training phase, which gets a lot of the attention. It's truly a living system, not just a static piece of code. And it needs constant care and feeding, you know? Neglecting this last step, iteration and monitoring, basically just nullifies all the hard work you put into the first 5.
That's a really powerful way to put it. A living system. It definitely reshapes how we should think about these AI projects. Okay, so shifting gears slightly, for those in our audience who are looking to maybe enter the AI field or perhaps advance their careers in it, how can they best showcase their value, especially given everything we've just discussed about the full life cycle and all these pitfalls? How do they stand out from someone who just says, hey, I built a model with 95% accuracy?
Yeah, that's a really, really important question for anyone thinking about their career and how to differentiate themselves. So on your resume, for example, don't just write, trained a model with 95% accuracy. I mean, okay, that's a technical fact, but it doesn't tell me anything about real-world impact. Instead, try framing your achievements in terms of business value. Something like, designed and deployed a model that reduced company processing errors by, say, 15%. Or maybe boosted revenue by X million euros by optimizing our customer churn prediction model.
Ah, okay. So you're connecting that technical skill directly to a tangible business outcome. That shows a more strategic mindset, not just a purely technical one.
Exactly, you get it. And this carries right over into interviews too. You'll often get a question like, okay, imagine your model is technically excellent, performs great on the metrics, but your boss says it's useless. What do you do?
Right, the classic scenario.
Yeah. And the worst response is to start arguing about the accuracy numbers or the F1 score. A much, much better response, a truly impactful one, is to circle back to the business problem itself. You ask questions like, okay, understand, how can this model truly help our users or the company? What specific pain point are we actually trying to solve here? And how can we adjust its output, maybe its integration, or perhaps even reframe the problem slightly to make sure it meets that specific need?
So less defending the model, more collaborating on the solution.
Precisely. That approach demonstrates you're not just a technician focused only on the model's internal workings. It proves you're thinking like an expert in landing AI, right? Someone who understands the practical application, how to align it with the organization's goals. And frankly, that's a much more valuable asset to any team. It shows you can deliver complete real-world solutions, not just code.
That's incredibly actionable advice, really shifting the focus from just the technical skill to strategic problem solving. So to kind of bring it all home for our listeners today, what's the ultimate takeaway message you want them to leave with?
I'd say to truly succeed in AI, don't just aim to be a modeling athlete. focused only on performance metrics. Aim higher. Aim to be an expert in delivering complete real-world solutions that provide genuine, tangible business value. It's really about understanding that the journey doesn't end when the model is trained. In many ways, that's just the beginning of its true life cycle. And actually, now we want to hear from you, the listeners. In the entire AI project life cycle we talked about today, from defining the problem all the way through to continuous iteration, which step do you personally find the most challenging in practice? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Someone once said building a model is kind of like raising a pet, which is okay, kind of cute. But I actually think it's more like raising a child, seriously. You can't just, bring them into the world and then walk away. You have to feed them, make sure they sleep okay, educate them, guide them. Otherwise, they'll inevitably go astray when they grow up. And your AI models, they need that same kind of continuous care and attention to truly thrive and keep delivering value over the long term.
That's a truly memorable analogy, and it perfectly sums up the whole life cycle we've explored today. Thank you so much, Dr. AI, for sharing such invaluable insights. It's been a really, really illuminating deep dive. And speaking of what's next, definitely join us for our next deep dive. We'll be tackling AI's next step, from foundational to generative AI. It's going to be another fascinating exploration looking at the real cutting edge of artificial intelligence. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that one. Thank you again for joining us on the deep dive, and we'll see you next time.